always like to emphasize this ability in general that is microorganisms like yeast in particular have to induce a stable ruminal environment. And sometimes a stable ruminal environment has nothing to do with the increase in pH. Maybe it's decreasing the variability of ruminal pH.
Welcome back to the Dairy Podcast Show. My name is Barry Bradford from Michigan State University. Today I'm looking forward to talking with Dr. Jhones Sarturi. Dr. Sarturi is a faculty member at Texas Tech University in Lubbock. His background is he's originally from Brazil. He got his veterinary degree from the University for the Development of Pantanal, followed by a master's in agronomy from the University of Sao Paulo. And then he came to the U.S. to do a PhD in animal science from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln before moving to Texas, doing a postdoc at Texas A&M, and then joining the faculty at Texas Tech in 2013. He has a teaching and research appointment there, where his research focuses on beef cattle nutrition and ruminal metabolism, especially the development of strategies to improve, evaluate, and better utilize byproducts, forages, and grains in ruminant diets. He also manages the Ruminant Nutrition Laboratory and the Ruminant Nutrition Center at Texas Tech, which helps him foster basic and applied research in ruminant nutrition and help to encourage undergraduate and graduate students working in this field. So with that introduction, Dr. Sarturi, thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor for me to participate. I have been waiting for the invitation for a long time, I guess. It's we all hope to collaborate, and I can be thankful enough for the opportunity to share a couple of thoughts with you guys here today.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. So I always like to find out a little bit about people's background. You got trained as a veterinarian. First of all, what got you on that path?
Yes. So I had all set in mind to be a lawyer. I guess I had a very good plan, and I didn't follow that path. It might be because of my sister, so she's a lawyer. So we get influenced by people, right? But I've been in agriculture since very young. My family actually, we were born in South Brazil. My family moved to a different country to work in agriculture in Paraguay, actually. So I could learn Spanish over there. That was great. So I've always been involved, and within me, I guess I had that prepared, and I just wasn't in the mindset, I guess, in collaborating in agriculture, but ended up working out that I went to a veterinary school, and then there was no end after that. So it took me quite a while to find a job, right? I guess parents sometimes they wonder why this kid is 30 years old, is still in school, right? So it takes a little longer when we are going to graduate school, but I found my passion and my path. And I believe it was inside me already, and I just didn't know at that time.
Yeah, there you go.
AB Vista helps dairy producers maximize their herd potential with feed intelligence and targeted ingredients to optimize rumen function and overall animal health. From young calves to lactating dairy cows, AB Vista is here to combine industry-leading products and optimal feed strategies to increase your ROI.
And so you've been in Texas for 10 years now. How much do you interact with the industry there, with the feedlot industry or other parts of the industry?
Yeah, no, a lot. Great, and that's a great point, because I have a research in a teaching appointment, but we don't have extension here. So we are at Texas Tech University, but we have what we call the outreach. And one of the things that I have been doing actually is incorporating also inside my teaching this relationship with the producers. So I developed my classes to be service learning. And by coincidence, I guess I'm doing a service learning propaganda over here. So for our team, so we basically, instead of me to be doing hypothetical examples that on the board, repeating things over here, we basically partner with producers. So then these students can actually not be thinking on the perfect answer, but perhaps on how to ask the necessary questions.
Right.
So questions go with the producer. So it's a collaboration, right? As I never know what's coming, by the way, because they select the community that they are serving. It's a service to society, right? The best as we can. So it's always a question mark, and it makes me be up to date as well, make me study hard, so then I don't embarrass myself in front of the students, right? And so I have been incorporating this collaboration also in my teaching, and of course in the research. We have the aspect, right? We go visit, we do tours, we connect with the associations, but I guess I have been, throughout the years, when I matured more in this academia arena, I have been this move that I did on the service learning aspect. I'm pretty happy with it, and don't take me wrong, it takes quite a little bit extra time. You probably know that, right? But it's very fruitful, and you can see in the eyes of these kids that they are doing something meaningful. Sometimes it's even emotional when depending on the community that we're serving. So
that's amazing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I like how you point out. I think you're totally right that it's, especially in the Google era, helping kids learn how to ask the right questions is maybe more important than memorizing a pile of facts, right? I
always tell them that if you don't know the answer, you can still give your opinion, right? But formulating that question is what will make that information start to mine, and silence sometimes doesn't solve the problem, right? We can shut our mouth and do right in a lot of situations, but you have to get a way to mine that information so then you can collaborate, right? So
yeah, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dig in a little bit into your current research focus. Obviously, you're working in ruminant metabolism, specifically digestive physiology. First of all, for people working day to day on farms, what do you exactly mean by that digestive physiology or digestive, metabolism?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the main connection that we have with the digestive process is we are manipulating these nutrients that we are offering to these animals, right? And we like to think in a simplistic way that it is a diet that you're providing nutrients, but it's actually not that simple, because the animal behavior is being affected, right? The weather is being affected, and weather we sometimes becomes more or less popular depending if you're going under that drought or not, or flooding, right? We got 8 inches in 7 days over here, a few days ago. So it can be surprising sometimes. But the main connection we have is with these nutrients that we are offering these animals. And we like to think that inside that box, that if I meet these nutrient requirements, I'm good. So the computer can basically do my job. And then we prove ourselves like day after day that is not only about that, right? It's the interaction among these nutrients, how this digestion is affected by the feeding behavior of the animal. We talk a lot about number of meals and the length of that meal. Why that's not more popular? Well, because it's difficult to measure. I guess there are a lot of artificial intelligence now that will hopefully instigate a little bit more on that arena. But we do a lot of visual observations over here, so with a good groundwork on the feeding behavior. And so by digestive physiology, along with what I made short is trying to put in the context these things that we can manipulate with the intuit to make these animals more resilient, more efficient, right? And with a producing safe products, and providing food security for the industry. So these things that we can manipulate, there are things that we cannot. But if we can understand, perhaps we can achieve the goal to improve this resilience for the livestock production in general, right? And the beauty, I guess, is we can spread these to other species as well. Although I work with beef cattle, we can use the same concept for other animal species, and even for companion animals, if you will, because the behavior aspect, the social impact, the behavior aspect is there. It's just those are just difficult things to be measured, I guess. So
I want to dig into a couple of points you made there that I think are excellent. One, the whole idea that how we formulate a diet or the kind of diet we put in front of animals can actually influence their feeding behavior. And you said that influences efficiency. So help us think through if that's, let's assume that's true. Do we want animals to eat more meals per day, less meals per day? What are you thinking about when it comes to that?
Yes, absolutely. So things that we more traditionally, let's do the opposite, more traditionally measure, right? And we have done quite a bit inside my lab is the speed of digestion of things, the rate of degradation, right? How quick these things are degraded. And well, another way to look at this from the outside is if the digestion, let's talk about rumen, if the ruminal rate of utilization of disappearance of those nutrients is quicker, right? If that rate is quicker, what is the effect that will have on the ability of the animals to consume that diet, right? At the end of the day, the amount of nutrients that they will consume can be regulated for several things. We can talk about here anorexigenic and orexigenic aspects of it, but at the end of the day, these animals will have this load of nutrients that they will consume. And it matters how they consume that. So we like to believe that when these animals distribute the load of these nutrients throughout this, let's call it 24-hour, in a more frequent and more often and less meal length, so smaller meals and more quantity of meals, we like to believe that it will distribute the load of nutrients, which can save a lot of headache when we think about the metabolites that will be produced when these nutrients are utilized, right? When these nutrients start to disappear inside the digestive tract. So we like to talk a lot about rumen, but it's not only inside the rumen as well. So and we know that this behavior of consumption and actually beautifully measured by dairy scientists. I wish we would do more of these on the beef side, but I guess there is a merging going on this arena. But it has to do with the speed of this nutrient disappearance. It has to do with the availability of the nutrients. It has to do with the load of nutrients offered. And people like to say that, how many meals are your animals getting? And they say, oh, I feed it 3 times a day, so they're getting 3 meals. No, they're not. The beef cattle are getting their 8 to 12 meals throughout the day, regardless of how many times you feed these animals. So how well are we allowing these animals to distribute this nutrient load, if you will? So I think, and again, it's I don't like to seem like utopia, like it's something that is unachievable. But I think that we need to remember that we have the power to try to modulate these things. And it might be a management, it might be a dietary formulation, and we usually add feeding behavior at the end. I usually have done in my publications at the end of the publication. So we measure this, and that, and feeding behavior. So I joke with my colleagues over here that feeding behavior now has passed through the middle of my title. And perhaps in the future I will be designing only with that objective, then it might become the beginning of my title. But it is a fact, and sometimes we can even use as a cause, right? It's for the responses that we see when we manipulate diets, especially in this harsh environment, right? And we are in a semi-arid region, and there are different portions of the country that have their uniqueness as well related to environment, which can affect the behavior of the animals.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you're talking about has very clear implications for dairy farms, for example, with relatively high stocking density. If a diet or the situation cows are in makes them come to the bunk very hungry all at once on the primary feeding of the day, you're going to end up with a lot of sort of fighting for space and that sort of thing. Whereas if you can introduce a situation where, like you said, they're eating more smaller meals and they're distributing those more evenly through the day, there's maybe less issues with that. So
in beef cattle, we talk a lot about bunk management, and perhaps it's the same concept. And we like to see, like when we go to a feedlot, we like to call it 3/3. It's a third of the animals when you're feeding going to the bunk, a third of the animal in the middle of the pen, a third of the animal in the back of the pen, just waiting for that turn, right? Because we do not have a space for everyone inside in the front of that bunk, right? And that it's about that. It's about the daily management, right? So it goes a little bit away from what we do in the computer, and we hope for that diet to be the one that is consumed. But it has to do with it, and it's not only the diet, but the management as well.
So talk to me a little bit too about, you mentioned one of the goals of the strategies you're working with is to make animals more resilient. What do you mean by that? Resilient against what challenges?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we like to think here. So this is more region to region, but we can use, I guess, the concept for whatever the place. I guess if it is too hot or too cold, but the point is we're offering these animals the system not forces, but it somehow condition us to have these animals to increase efficiency. And by increase efficiency means they have to produce with quality, with respecting the uniqueness of the animals, with considering well-being, but in a shorter amount of time. And how quick and how hard you push for this shorter amount of time will dictate how these animals will respond. So receiving diets, how long do we have to adapt these animals? Is any strategy to happen in that moment so then I don't compromise the development of this animal long run, because most of the cases, if you're dealing with a calf-fed system, we'll have this animal for 250 days inside the feedlot. In a dairy facility, the same. You're going to be feeding these animals all year long, right? And they eat much more than beef cattle, so the load of nutrients is elevated as well. So how efficient we are to having these animals exposing their potential for production, but at the same time, their potential for the longevity in the system, like if we think about the dairy, but on the shortness of the system, if you think about the beef system, right? We heard about the poor doers, right? And I believe the poor doers all started because of our fault in a specific moment, and how can we decrease the amount of these poor doers, let's call that way, and make sure that, yes, we can have healthy animals producing great products in an efficient way, respecting the environment, but also being economic, being profitable, right? So the resilience of the system, I guess, involves more than just the health of the animal or if it is profitable or not. So that's what I mean about the resilience of the system, because it has to be connected, right, on keeping these people in business, but at the same time respecting resources and respecting the animals. So I like to think about the resilience of the system. So maybe it's a too broad of a term for it.
That helps. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about, you've, I think, done a nice job of explaining some of the goals that you have in your research program. So what sorts of tools are you looking at right now that you think help animals move in this direction of being more resilient, maybe more efficient at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we all have our own personal bias, right? So, and that everyone is guilty of it. And I have, and we can gauge this by how much time you have how much time of your graduate students you're investing on it. And direct fat microbials have been one of our focus over here. But one of the things that we believe that make us unique in our program is trying to, yes, respect, design, and know minimizing confounding on factors, but try to use more of a holistic approach rather than evaluating one single strategy or one single molecule in one specific moment, and then perhaps we are missing some of the additional nutritional support, let's put that way, that could make a technology succeed or increase the efficacy in a specific moment. So I think it's important to have things isolated and minimizing confounding, but at the end of the day, when this technology is direct, let's talk about microorganisms, for example, direct fed microbes, when they hit the digestive tract, maybe even before in the diet, they will be interacting with supporting nutrition, with supporting chemicals, with supporting substances that will affect their development. Right?
Absolutely. So that, to some extent, that sounds a little bit like a strategy that's gaining popularity in human nutrition is to combine prebiotics and probiotics, right? Is that sort of the way you think about it? And can you define that for us?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and yes, and some technologies they actually have all together, right? If you think about some fermentation products that can be used, for example, that have a combination of technologies, right? And we always should do a good job in trying to characterize this and describe what is actually in there, right? So that we are not just blinding ourselves on the effects. So that's where the misconception come on the combos, is because sometimes we are just blinding ourselves to the variability that you are adding. But when you design for these things, I guess it's a win-win situation. So, for example, microorganisms that have an effect on modulating ruminal fermentation. Does ruminal papillae has an impact on this modulation of the fermentation? Does oxidative stress, not only of the animal in the tissue, but within the microorganism, the microbiota inside the rumen has an effect on that? Which vitamins or which minerals or which nutritional support we can give to minimize some of these constraints, which help us to explain perhaps, oh, it worked well in this type of diet, but it didn't in this type of diet, right? So, oh, it's the same amount of starch. It got to be that the microorganism is dead, right? So we try to blame on things that we are second guessing ourselves, and perhaps part of this holistic approach on this support nutritional combination can give us a better guidance. Instead of trying to eliminate all the confounders we can get, maybe we bring some of these together to have perhaps a positive associative effect on the response, right? So it's challenging. It's I guess simpler said than done, but you have to have the scientific rationale behind, right? It cannot be gambling by any means. Otherwise, then it's better just to isolate the effects, right? So then I would agree with everybody else on that. So.
And yeah, to your point about we can't just throw this in a computer and have the computer do the job, right? So if you mentioned associative effects. So we know from experiments that there are things we can put in diets that are going to influence digestibility of other things. And yet I'm not aware of any animal nutrition computer model that will accurately account for those things, right? So that's where human expertise brings a lot of value. And I think there's real potential still to learn more to inform humans better that are doing diets. Mm-hmm. What particular, you mentioned using sort of holistic interventions or tools. Talk me through some of those that you're working with right now.
Okay, all right. So, for example, live yeast, for example, has been around. Every time I see a review, I try to see how many papers they mention or how many years that has been around. I lost count on that, and I guess there are several ways to count that. But why do we continue assessing? Why is still a so productive area in science, and so there is a reason for that, and the reason is we are trying to find these better strategies. We are trying to understand why it works sometimes and does, and others, why that effect is not clear, and it was within the determination that we had for this study that is no longer anymore over there. And then we try to think about, okay, that's just the number of the animals. Let's every single study now, let's use 1,000 animals and we solve all the problems. And the answer would be no, right? When the answer is too simple like that, I guess we can already expect that the answer is probably not that way. So, well, one of the things we have been exploring is this oxidative environment. This oxidative environment, and I like to focus in the rumen, but we have been merging to other digestive compartments as well. So, in the development of the papillae, because at the end of the day, this papillae will mediate the absorption of a lot of fatty acids and minerals and vitamins, and we want a healthy ruminal papillae, and we actually have a little arm as well connect to try to work on liver abscesses and try to understand more about this and rethink about the things that we thought we knew. Maybe we don't know as much as we thought. So it's so when we are using models or like live yeast that have a scientific background on modes of action and on potential activity of these microorganisms inside the rumen, that's the point that you can think about supporting nutrients that can fulfill the same mission. So one of the things that I try to focus with live yeast is oxidative stress and development of papillae. And I mentioned before vitamin C and vitamin B1. It wasn't a coincidence. It's a couple of things that we have been assessing. But the idea ultimately is to have the support need, provide this support for the microorganism, and it might be through the host, it might be through the microbiota directly, but try to fill up some of these gaps that we feel there is a potential to be fulfilled, especially for high-producing animals. We are putting calves. We expect a lot from these animals nowadays and advancements in genetics, especially in the beef side. So the dairy side has been, I guess, a long way from ahead of this curve. But on the beef side, there's improvements in genetics, and we're exploring more of these animals as we go. These high-producing animals perhaps have unique needs that maybe we didn't have in the past when we were harvesting these animals with 800 pounds or 900 pounds.
So I like that concept. You're looking for nutrients that are going to sort of work synergistically with the direct-fed microbial live yeast in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Talk me through some of the interesting findings you've had in that space. Are you seeing these combined packs have clear impacts in a repeatable way, or are you seeing more effects in certain situations?
Yeah, so we have been. There are a couple of things that seem to be very consistent, and we feel very happy about it, because it means that it has to do more with the concept and less with the current situation, right? Because there are type of animals and time of the year; those are all compoundings, right? But we had a chance to be around in the arena for the past few years with this concept, and for example, effects on adipose tissue deposition, perhaps not in the portion that we wanted that adipose tissue to be at. Like if we think about the beef cattle, we talk about marbling, right? But by the fact that we are getting carcasses with a greater adipose tissue, it tells me that we made these nutrients more available if the intake wasn't a direct effect. So it tells me that more of those nutrients were utilized. And the digestion, perhaps the efficiency of that digestion per gram of organic matter fermented, or whatever the unit we want to use. But until we figure out to better partition this, I guess the improvement in disappearance in digestion is something very popular. We used to see improvement in digestion and then not in a different situation. And this improvement in dry matter digestibility, organic matter digestibility, especially fiber components, NDF, ADF, and hemicellulose, we do by calculation, has been very consistent in different scenarios, regardless if it's a calf fat, if it is a yearling system, or if it is a high stressful environment. We try to modulate that as well. Actually, some of these responses can be more actually intense on animals that were challenged somehow because of environment or management. And the way we do it, we didn't put them in chambers, so we try to stimulate more on the management of these animals to stimulate this stress. But regardless of the situation, this improvement in digestion in the adipose tissue has been very consistent. So it improvement in ruminal papillae absorptive area, for example. So this have been repeated, and then we get one or other elements showing up occasionally that we feel that it might be more related to the animal rather than the technology being used. But digestion, adipose tissue would be the main ones.
And just to pick on one of those outcomes, and this may well be pure speculation, but help me connect the dots, how you think a live yeast that's fed along with some other components of a supplement might actually improve whole tract digestibility of fiber, for example.
Absolutely. So there have been, and this is a great arena because there have been great reviews that have touched on this topic, and it's always nice because we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we do a project, right? So that is a great portion. But I guess on top of all these effects that live yeast could be potentially enduring or inducing in the physiology of digestion, I would highlight a couple of the things related to stability of ruminal environment. So ability to stimulate lactate utilizing bacteria, for example, fibrolytic degrading microorganisms. And we can talk about oxygen scavenging, which has to do with the oxidation, the redox potential inside the rumen, right? Which live yeast would be reducing that stress, let's put that way. We can think about different portions of the rumen, right? Rumen walls or in the middle, we can measure that different ways as well. But I always like to emphasize this ability in general that these microorganisms, live yeast in particular, have to induce a stable ruminal environment. And sometimes a stable ruminal environment has nothing to do with the increase in pH. Maybe is decreasing the variability of ruminal pH. So Dr. Bushman and Dr. Penn in Canada have done a tremendous job on showing that relationship of it might not have to be with the average. It might be the decrease in variability, right? And these are consistent things that we can see that might induce the improvement of this nutrient utilization, right? Less of these bumps inside the digestive tract will favor ruminal degradation, and why not intestinal disappearance as well? Why not hindgut? We don't measure much hindgut, right? It's not because it's not important, right? It's difficult. It's challenging. And we have been recently using, for example, some of the Of course, we didn't invent this. Fecal pH has been around for a long time, measurement. But one of the things we have been doing is this cyclical assessment, right? This 24 hours, because depending on the moment you measure, you might be measuring up there or down here. So I believe graduate students love when I say that we have a 24-hour collection, or at least 24 time points. There are several ways we can do that. But one of the things that is interesting is that sometimes, for example, doing a simple comparison, a finisher diet and a grower diet, and we look at the fecal pH, and then I would say, okay, so the finisher diet, more fecal starch, greater fermentation, it drops the pH. The difference is there. That might be the reason. It might be because of the load. It might not be starch concentration in the diet, it might be the starch consumption. But that's a scene for a different discussion. But you have those differences, and one of the things is when we have yeast included in this type of assessment, perhaps we exacerbate that difference. Not by changing much the lower pH, but raising the greatest pH, and it means that more of that starch disappearing, right? Making the more of that starch to disappear. So exacerbating those differences, making it less variable. And actually it's related when we try to measure these things, and we are capable actually to detect differences, right? Because they are less variable. So it's not only about the size or the magnitude of that difference, but actually the ability to detect that difference, because now things are less variable. And I think that's a good point we can think about live yeast, making things less variable in the digestive tract.
So I know you spend most of your time thinking about applications on the beef side, but if you had one takeaway from your work that you think could really impact decisions we make with diets for dairy cattle, for example, what would that be? What comes to your mind?
Yeah, so I always try to think about the things that overlap, right? So then I can make my my message meaningful, right? But a couple of the things that we need to realize that it really happens with these dairy cows is the load of nutrients, the consumption, the load of the nutrients that these animals will take every single day. So if a feeding behavior hasn't been yet the focus of your measurements, of your observations, I think is as it is merging in the title of my publications, I guess it should merge as well as the importance on things that we observe every day. And don't take me wrong, anecdotal observations are very valid, and some changes in management or things that can make these animals actually not charging that buck, right? And they're distributing this load of nutrient consumption, and of course have a balanced diet based on the phase that animal needs. But unique things in the operation that might be affecting this animal behavior might be much more important and valuable than try to see how many parts per million of this or that micromineral, which I bet the nutritionists are already doing a great job. And taking care of that, we can call housekeeping, right? Although a lot of things to figure out yet, but we like to think that we are covering these bases, and at distance, the nutritionist is not every day inside the operation, right? No one would do that. And how is that communication happening, right? It's some of the social aspect as well. And I got a PhD in philosophy, right? Doctorate in philosophy, right? But I don't like to talk about that. But how is that communication happen? How is that transfer of information from the employee for the person that is on a daily basis with these animals, helping me to set up a nutritional strategy? Is this communication happening, right? And it's challenging, right? It's not easy because a computer yet cannot do that for us. I don't think it will ever be able to, but it will be always tools that we will have, right? Dr. Tedeschi has several, my colleague further south over here at Texas A&M, and had a great symposium this year in Animal Science, and we talk about artificial intelligence, right? And how the phase that we are evolving now that we have these numbers, right? And we're trying to make these numbers become information, so then we can develop tools, right? Tools for what? Is to connect this communication on these anecdotal observations that can help us to better manage these animals and better provide the nutrients that throughout the day for these animals. It's challenging, but I think we have extra tools coming on, but that will never replace the communication, right, Dr. Bradford? I believe it has been out there since a long time, and people like to say that the eyes of the owner makes a difference, right? And it does, is especially when the owner is the one taking the decisions. But what if we have a large group and you need to make that information from your eyes to pass across? So then the nutritionist is aware, right? The person in charge of the management is aware. The employees that on the high or low pay grade, it doesn't matter, are aware, so then they can collaborate. So that's the communication, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's a lot of space for overlap there.
Mm-hmm.
Your partner in improving animal performance, Berg & Schmidt. They provide high-quality, economical feed ingredients for ruminants, like their well-researched coated nutrients and fat powders that can support cows with additional available energy, which improves their overall health, productive performance, and your cost efficiency. It's time for our famous 3.
Data shows most cattle don't get enough beta-carotene. DSM's Victus Transition can help support your cattle's fertility and colostrum quality through beta-carotene supplementation. Learn more at dsm.com/Victus Transition.
All right, as we get close to the end of our time, there's always 3 questions we like to throw at every guest, and it's interesting to see what we get back. So I'm going to start with those. First of all, your favorite dairy-related or maybe ruminant nutrition-related book or resource?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've been I'm a really fan of the national academies. I'm a really fan of the national academies and the publications they put out, and these people that are involved in these committees, and they have done a tremendous job recently on adding information in these publications on the national academies. I'm not saying it wasn't properly done in the past. It's just the additional information that has been put together and some of the explanation and the background of it. So I'm a really big fan of the national academies, and one day I hope one day I can collaborate and serve the society, being part of some of these committees. But I would say for the dairy, for the beef, for the equine, for the swine, is the National Academies of Science, Engineer, Medicine. I think it's we make analogies, right, on religion, on it, but maybe it's wrong. We call the Bible of it, and I guess it's things generated within the context of the world, and these committees have done a tremendous job in putting this information together. So I'm always pro to stimulate. If you want to have one, if you haven't one yet, you should get within the species you are interested in. Yeah.
Well said. All right. What about your favorite book or resource outside of agriculture?
Yes. So I like to read a lot of unrelated things, and my wife is in accounting and these other things. And I guess one of the always make me think about the strategy is the art of war. And when we are thinking about strategies, is maybe if you haven't read the book, it has basically nothing to do about killing anyone. Is about to strategize and being able to be part of a succeed in using these strategies within a community that you survive. And I think we can take that very same concept and place in education and place in research, and place in personal life, in place in personal relationships. I have a big group over here. I have several graduate students, several undergraduate research. I'm very proud of all of them. Several residents working in my team as well from different countries. And we always have to think about how to strategize not only our professional goals, but also our personal goals. And the Art of War, I guess, give you several nice tips over that on how important a strategy is and actually how to use it. So that would be my tip, I guess.
Good answer. Okay. And then last, in your opinion, what sets successful dairy professionals apart from those who are less successful?
Yeah, so if you allow me, I would like to pull a little bit of the hook up what I mentioned about these service learning classes that I have invested quite a bit of time. I teach 6 classes in the department. I've been merging this class to a service learning, and our ability, and I'll be guilty sometimes of not doing that much because I like to talk, but our ability to mine that information, to listen to people, our ability to get needed questions out there. So then even if the answer is not known, as soon as you ask a question and you get you don't know the answer, that becomes a seed which will hopefully develop in a discovery of a solution, maybe empowering a student, but ultimately serving society. So if we expose ourselves to ask the questions, expose ourselves to listen and try to mine that information and never give up on that, ultimately we will serve better society. And that is related to the job you have, right? You can translate that ultimately. You will not lose your job, right? Ultimately, you're going to be promoted. But the motivation is important. So if we had mindset on serving society with excellence, if you have that as a mindset, that will affect what you say, it will affect what you think, and will affect your actions. And you will serve society with excellence, hopefully in the short and as soon as possible, right? But you will do it and will make you resilient. So I think is have the right motivation. Think about serving society with excellence, and then everything else will be a consequence with time and what you expose yourself to. So,
a fantastic message and a lot of wisdom there.
Great, thank you.
100%.
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure. Dr. Jhones Sarturi, thank you for joining us from Texas Tech. And we look forward to seeing you serving on a Beef National Academy's Nutrient Requirements Committee in the future sometime.
There you go. Great. Amen. And thank you again for the invitation. Very honored to spend minutes with you guys. And feel free to reach out if I can be helpful in anything else.
Thank you. This has been another episode of the Dairy Podcast Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that button so you don't miss the next episode. And until next time, we'll see you then.